Hello guys and welcome to another video. My name's Mark, I'm an entrepreneur and property investor, and today's video, this is the one you've been waiting for. How can you earn a lot of money and pay very little tax? Because we all know it's not just what you earn, it's what you keep that matters. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you how the wealthy structure their affairs to minimize the amount of tax they pay, as well as lots of little tricks that anybody can take advantage of right now. I've got all the information from the government website. I'm going to put little pictures up. You're going to be able to see all the information. It's going to be a really handy guide of how to earn money, how to compound your wealth and pay as little tax as possible. It's all completely legal. I'm not showing you anything that isn't out there in the public domain. But Nick, let's go to the whiteboard right now and get into it with the guys. Let's go. So guys, welcome to the whiteboard. We're going to be talking today about zero tax, not how to reduce your tax. We'll do that in another video. Today is all the ways that you can earn money, compound your wealth and pay zero tax. Because the reality is, the more you save on tax, the more your wealth will compound over time. It's not just about what you make, it's about what you keep. Now, before I get into the video, please give it a big like. I massively appreciate it. It helps the algorithm boost this so that other people can get this sort of information. And the other thing, if you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing, because ultimately we are giving away the dividend portfolio every month. We give away cash to our subscribers. On top of that, we're giving away an investment house once we get to 100,000 subscribers. So no reason not to subscribe. So hit that bell notification, make sure you're alerted every time we put out a new video, and let's get into it. Let's find out exactly how we can save on tax. Now, I'm going to start with the basics and we're going to work the way through to some more complicated things. So number one on my list is your personal allowance. Now, this is the amount of money you're allowed to earn before you start paying any tax at all. So your income is $12,570. There is zero tax to pay. Everybody knows about this. It's not something too complicated. We're not going to dwell on this point, but the first thing on my list is your personal allowance and the amount of money that you're allowed to earn from earned income without paying any tax. So guys, the second thing on my list is the interest allowance. And if you're a higher rate payer, you can claim £500 a year interest completely free of charge. If you're a lower rate taxpayer or basic rate taxpayer, it is £1,000 a year. Now, obviously with interest rates being so low, you might think, why would I want to consider this? It's not just bank interest that you can earn using this allowance. There's also peer-to-peer, there's bonds, there's lots of things that you can do that will give you between 5 and 10% return on investment. So to get £1,000, you might only need to put as little as £10,000 in to be able to take part and take advantage of this £1,000 a year interest allowance. I'm sure Nick will have put the picture up so you can see the list of all the things that you can do, but it's not just bank interest, it's peer-to-peer, it's bond funds, there's lots of other things that you can do to make sure you bump up those returns and take advantage of this allowance. So number 3 is ISA allowance. Now every year, if Nick puts up the picture, you can see that you can invest £20,000 a year each into your ISA. Now I would definitely say that with interest rates being so low, 0.2%, there's just no point in doing it in a bank. However, if you have an interest in stocks and shares or funds or index funds like I do, I'm very into index funds, £20,000 a year, you can earn on that every year for the rest of your life completely tax-free. So it's a fantastic allowance, and I think anybody just starting out investing who maybe doesn't have a huge amount of money to invest, that'd be the first place I would look. How can I take advantage of that ISA allowance? How can I set a habit, make sure that I'm moving in the right direction, and ultimately for the rest of your life, any income you receive from those investments will be tax-free, and that's capital gains or dividend income. It's either or. It doesn't matter how the money's paid to you, it's completely tax-free. So it's really important that you know that, and it's a fantastic way to supercharge your wealth because you're not paying any tax on any of the money that you earn. It's fantastic. It's a great tool for building wealth. Number 4 on my list is fairly similar, to be honest, and this is your capital gains allowance. So at the moment, your capital gains allowance is, let's just check, Nick put a picture up, I'm going to check on my phone, £12,300. Which is fantastic. That is a huge amount of money to be able to make tax-free on top. So we've got nearly £1,000 a month here, £100 a month here, £1,000 a month here. ISA allowance is unlimited. There's many people who've got millions in their ISA, and that's paying them 10 grand a month completely tax-free. So, you know, this is not small money. Capital gains it's basically set up so that if you buy something and then you sell it for more later, you pay capital gains tax. Now that's normally at a reduced rate to, for example, income tax, but it is still a tax. At the moment it's set at 20%. If it's a residential property, I think it's 28%, but make sure you check. For this purposes, we're doing zero tax stuff. But you got 12,300, so how could you take advantage of that? Now let's say, for example, you opened up a fund and share account, and we'd already used our ISA allowance. We had 120,000 that we can invest into a fund and share account. Well, if we used index funds and we looked at an average return of 10%, well, every year that's going to return us £12,000. Now, you do need to crystallise the profit in order to claim the allowance. So you have to sell the 120,000 at 132,000, and then you will have crystallised the profit, and at that point you can claim the allowance. But again, a fantastic way to earn money and pay zero tax. Capital gains allowance, make sure you look into it, make sure you're using it as soon as your wealth starts growing. ISA is probably superior on the basis that ultimately you are never going to pay tax on anything that you earn in there. Capital gains, though, using fund and share accounts, buying property, making it worth more, selling it on, all that sort of stuff, you've still got this allowance. It's still going to let you get £1,000 a month completely tax-free. It's a fantastic allowance to use. I personally try and make sure I use that every year. Number 5, and now we're getting even more complicated, okay? So we're going to turn the page. So the 5th one on my list is the rent-a-room scheme. And again, Nick will put the image up, but this allows you to have £7,500 a year or £625 per calendar month of income from renting out a spare room in your house completely free of charge of tax. Again, an incredible incentive. If you've got an annex, if you've got a spare room, anything like that that you can give up in terms of space, that's a huge amount of income to be able to have on top of all the other allowances, tax-free. But my next point, number 6, what we're going to go into now, this is the holy grail. This is how really wealthy people make sure that they pay as little tax as possible while spending as liberally as they want to. So number 6 is borrow it. And this really harks back to property, it harks back to business. There are many, many ways which this is used, and I'll explain why and how now. So in terms of property, I quite often get asked when I put up something on Instagram and I say, I bought it for 100,000, I spent 20,000 on the renovation, and now it's worth 150,000. People often go, deduct your capital gains tax. Well, I don't, because I refinanced the property. And when you refinance the property, you're essentially just borrowing money. And any borrowed money, you're not going to pay any tax on it because it's just a loan. So really wealthy people, they generally do this with their company shares. And you might have heard of people like Elon Musk. They basically take out huge loans backed by the value of the company that they are operating within. And lots of people are talking about if Tesla started to go down in value, Elon Musk might get what's known as a margin call, which is where he's borrowed more money against the value of the shares than the shares are now worth, and therefore he would have to make the cash difference up. Now, in terms of borrowing, if we just scale that down to maybe myself and to a much smaller scale, because Elon Musk is a unique proposition, but if we look at maybe myself as an entrepreneur, I've borrowed lots of money against the value of my properties. That's allowed me to scale it up, but I can also spend that money. So let's say, for example, this year I refinanced a property in my limited company. My limited company currently owes me several £100,000 as a director loan because I've lent it that money to buy property. Now, when it pays that back to me, it's completely tax-free. Also, if I refinance anything in my personal name, it's completely tax-free. It's not income, so it's not taxable, but it's lent money. So you have to be a little bit careful. But when you are building up a property portfolio and your assets are going up in value, if you can finance against them and use that money, then that's how the very wealthy make sure they pay very, very little tax and they still get access to money that they have within assets. So the other thing that people who are wealthy do, obviously, is they take dividends, don't they? And the 7th thing on my list is the dividend allowance. And the dividend allowance can come from either a fund, an index fund, or it can come from an individual stock. But either way, you have £2,000 a year that you can earn completely tax-free before you start paying dividend tax on the dividends that you receive above that. So again, a lot of wealthy people are going to receive dividends from the companies that they earn. Again, they're going to deduct their dividend tax, but they are going to pay tax on anything above that. The borrowing means that they don't pay any tax on any of the money that they borrow against the value of the shares. But the dividend allowance, again, is something that I think everybody should be making use of and making sure that they get this extra £2,000 a year completely tax-free. Because remember, if you're a higher rate taxpayer, that's the same as adding £4,000 a year to your income. The same with this here, it's like adding £15,000 to your income. If you're looking at some of these other ones, it's a huge difference. So I think it's really important that you take advantage of as much of this tax-free money as you possibly can. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've massively enjoyed putting it together for you. For me, it's been one of the ones I've really wanted to do. How can we get away with paying as little tax as possible completely legally? And number one, personal allowance. Number two, interest allowance. Using bond funds, using peer-to-peer lending, all the lists that Nick put up there. ISA allowance, make sure you're using your 20 grand a year if you can. Capital gains allowance, £12,300 a year. It's a huge tax break. Number five, rent a room scheme, £7,500 a year or £625 a calendar month, completely tax-free. Borrow it, i.e. remortgage your house, remortgage assets, borrow against the value of shares that you hold. And number seven, your dividend allowance, which at the moment stands at £2,000 a year. Hopefully that helps you out, guys. I remember when I learned about all these different ways of having tax-free income, and I went out of my way to make sure I was using as many of them as I possibly could. I think it's a fantastic bit of information. I hope you guys do too. Please give it a subscribe if you like this channel. I'll see you on the next video.